having such bad weather here in North Florida since August when the hurricane rolled through. It is flooding today. And this isn't even as bad as it was early this morning.
I'll go in front, Ryder.
Now here after the storm, checking on everything, you can see the water standing in our arena. And everybody always wants to ask why in the world we don't have a garden in this section, and that is because when it rains, the water washes down that area and then through right here and then straight out that way between the dry lot and the garden. The water washes straight out there. So I've basically built my gardens on either side of the river that washes. So it looks like we got about 2 inches. So it looks like for the most part, these raised bed gardens, I mean, I think maybe the squash plants got tossed around a little bit and the zucchini plants, but for the most part, this garden survived. I think it's all starting to stand back up now that the sun is out. It's not super sunny yet, but I think these are all back to normal. It did kind of knock my trellis crooked. I have to get my husband to help me put up a stake in that. There are some huge cucumbers on there that I've got to pick off, so we'll come back and do that later this afternoon. Hopefully these sunflowers and zinnias that are planted down front recover when the sun comes out. Otherwise, looks like most of them were knocked over. Yeah.
Like this one?
And then the okra was all knocked over, so I've got to stand those all back up. Of course, they're covered in dirt. I hate in-ground gardens. I'm going to say this over and over. I love my raised bed gardens because, as you can see, they fared quite well. Now I'm going to have to come through and tie up all these tomatoes because it looks like they got knocked around also. And look at the bottom. I'm telling you, I do not have these issues in my raised bed gardens. Look at all the dirt that gets splashed. Anyway, so I'm going to go through now and fix all of these trellises and things. I don't typically get discouraged when gardening, but today is one of those super real days. Here we are after a storm. I could walk down these rows yesterday, and today I can't because it knocked everything so crazy. This year has been pretty tough. Every time I get something planted, it has rained. Like, I think there were 3 or 4 days in a row that it rained 6+ inches. Like, the rain gauge was overflowing. So this year has been pretty discouraging. As you can see, like, the okra is all knocked down. I could walk between these rows yesterday, so the tomatoes are all knocked down. Usually when the sun comes out, everything will stand back up, but I'm not sure that this all is going to stand back up. So I'm going to take and string this back up the best that I can, and hopefully over the next few days when the sun comes out, things will improve. My string is a hot mess. The box got wet in one of those storms that I talked about and fell apart, so now this is what I'm dealing with. And you just saw me cut a ton of it off. I chose to do the Florida weave method this year because last year I just staked everything, and it was my first year with a larger group of tomatoes, and so this year I decided to Florida weave, and I don't think I chose a good year to start this. Cages were overgrowing. I only grow determinate varieties, so like now I'm trying to figure out which tomato plant or where. I'm not gonna weave. Just gonna go down the edge. This. All right, I got all the tomatoes back strung up. It's not the prettiest job that I've ever done. And I definitely did not floor to weave. So like after this first row, I realized that I was not going to be able to weave. So I literally just went down and like did a string straight across to hold that side of the plants up, and a string straight across down that way on the other side to hold that side of the plants up. And maybe the next time we will be able to do the floor to weave. So is it going to look the prettiest? Absolutely not, but we're improvising and we're just trying to save the plants at this point. Hopefully when the sun comes out, it shapes back up. Yeah. So this is one of those points in gardening where it's a little bit of a letdown. Like the sunflowers were, like this high yesterday, and now they're all pretty knocked over. And then the okra, it absolutely hates me. Every year it gives me the most trouble. Used to be tomatoes, and then like the last 2 years I like somehow mastered those, and now it's okra, which is crazy because like the first year I grew it I did good. So like I even switched varieties that I grew this year, but yeah, probably won't be okra again this year either. We can get this all propped back up. In the moment, things are always tough, and then gotta remember, sunshine always comes after a rain. So. My plan for today was actually to come through and string these all up and spray everything with BT spray, and of course the storm came and that did not happen. Yeah, I think I'll be spraying with some copper fungicide tomorrow, just because I might should do it today. I'm kind of contemplating on what I should do, because these tomatoes are really covered in dirt, and so is the okra. I just don't want to do too much in one day. So I'm trying to decide if I should go ahead and spray with copper fungicide while everything's all wet and let it just all dry at one time. I think that's what I'm going to do. So, okay, so I forgot to record, but we've mixed up the copper fungicide, and copper fungicide is just used to treat things like, I use it to treat powdery mildew, but powdery mildew, early blight, downy mildew, and black spot. It is organic. You just mix it with water like anything else. And I forgot to charge my backpack sprayer, so hopefully we have enough battery to get the whole garden done. It's just fitting for the theme today. So.
Yeah.
All right,
Go time.
this thing's always so heavy. All right.
How do you even turn this thing down?
I'm fixing to. And my little boy wants to help me, so he's gonna walk down and spray this row over here. You can do this row first. Okay, let me see it. Let's see. Okay. Now just take your hands. Here you go. You're going up and down, and you're making sure that you get all of the leaves. Okay.
Even the tomatoes?
Yeah, it's fine on the tomatoes because you can pick them. You can pick them the same day when you spray with copper fungicide. It's not one of those things that you have to wait on. So it's okay if you get the tomatoes.
But you just have to dry them.
Yeah, you'd have to dry them. And you should always rinse it. Even if we grow it at home, you should always still just rinse it off.
If you don't grow at home, you don't need to.
No, you always need to rinse your vegetables, especially if you don't grow them at home.
I want to see grasshopper.
That's why we rinse all the strawberries and the apples and before we eat them.
I want to see grasshopper.
You do?
Yeah, see that green one?
Oh, yep, there he goes.
That's a big one too.
Every garden season comes with a different challenge. In a couple of days, I will go through the tomato garden and cut off the limbs that are diseased, because I am sure, matter of fact, that in a few days there will be tons of yellowing, dying limbs on the bottom of those plants that we just treated with the copper fungicide. Usually after a lot of rain, you can go through and pick a lot of cucumbers and squash and zucchini because they really bounce after the rain. So like these weren't here yesterday, but as you can see, I've already picked 4 cucumbers. I've never grown any of these varieties of cucumbers before, and there's actually some little leaves that are ready, and I think they're supposed to be a smaller variety, and I'm afraid that if I leave them on, then they're going to turn yellow just based off of the end. So I'm going to go ahead and pick these little leaves, pretty small. And I think that's probably the size that the biggest that they'll get.